Welcome to another episode of the Unshakable Habits podcast. If you are someone who always feels like you are behind, that no matter how hard you work, no matter how much effort you put in, it feels like there just are not enough hours in the day. It has got you feeling a certain kind of way. Today's episode is going to definitely be one you're going to want to tune in for.
The right habits put you in control of your health, relationships, mindset, and more. But most people lack the tools to stick with those habits long enough to see results. That is about to change. Welcome to the Unshakable Habits Podcast with your host, habit change specialist and speaker, Stephen Box. Join us each week as experts share their stories, experiences, and insights and give you the tools to build unshakable habits so you can live life on your terms. It's time to take your habits from unsustainable to unshakable.
I have with me today Christine Jewell, a faith-based executive coach and author of Drop the Armor. Christine, welcome to Unshakable Habits. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, what exactly does a faith-based executive coach do?
I am an executive coach, as obviously is in the title. And so I work with C-suite leaders, founders, people that are in high leadership positions that really want to experience more freedom, fulfillment while making an impact. So they are the builders of companies. They're the builders of people that are carrying a lot of burden on their shoulders. And I think sometimes when we carry the burden of the world, we get confused and we think that we need to be the savior of the world. And so as a faith-based coach, I come in and we not only talk about high performance, optimal health, all those things, relationship building, but we really do it from a Christ-centered approach, which is very different than how the world teaches us to operate.
Yeah, I love that. The thing that stands out for me too is that so many people, I think, will look at different people's situations and they think, oh, their situation's so different from mine. But whether you are a CEO of a large company or you're a mom or a dad, you have a lot of responsibilities. You have a lot on your plate. You have people who are depending on you. So you're going to run into the same problems, right? They might be on different scales, but you're running into the same problem. And so I think so much of what you're going to be able to talk about today is going to be applicable to everyone, whether they are that mom or dad at home or they're that executive working in a corporate office.
I agree. And I think it's in all of us. Even if you're leading yourself, you're still the CEO of leading yourself. And often the hardest person to lead and have boundaries around and self-discipline around is yourself. So if you can master self-leadership, I believe that to whom much is given, even more is required. So when you can learn to lead yourself well, you will be multiplied and receive other people to lead well. Hopefully you lead yourself well, you get a family to lead, you get a family, you'll get a team, and it'll continue to grow exponentially. So it starts at home.
Absolutely. Now, I know that obviously you working with busy executives, you are very familiar with the idea that you have all this stuff on your plate and it feels like there's just too many things to get done and it can be very overwhelming. So I know you have a lot of experience in this area, but I'm curious, do you have a personal story or personal experience that kind of helped you get into this in the first place?
Yeah. And again, I think overwhelm, regardless of who you are, regardless of what your walk is, we all know the feeling of being overwhelmed, of having too many things, too many dreams, too many demands, and we're trying to be everywhere at all times. And my own stories, I believe that some of us develop a high performance complex from the time we're young. That was my case. I received the love, the affection from my dad for scoring goals, getting the grades, being the good looking one, the fit one. As we learn from a young age who we need to be in order to be accepted, to be wanted, to belong, to be popular, to get ahead, whatever it is. And so the program, I call it the program, we're really just walking around. That's what habits are. They're programs, right? They're mental programs, they're subconscious programs. And so the program became perform more, perform harder, do more things, win at more things. and you'll be more loved, right? You'll be finally be enough. And we know how that doesn't really work because the more you do, the more you feel like you need to do. And it's really how much is enough, right? But so the program was in me early on, and I built businesses since I was in my 20s. I was building businesses with my ex-husband at the time, building teams, family, building businesses again after I got divorced and having the marriage fall apart the first time because we weren't focused on the right habits at home and our marriage and our relationship, becoming a world-class athlete, like training, winning races, having a highly successful health and performance business in Canada. But after all the years of pushing and building teams and making money, I was still like, what I found was I had a bunch of medals. I had a bunch of profit, right? I had beautiful kids. I had the home. I had the life. We were traveling. And I still was like chronically anxious. Like I was unsettled all the time. I would go to bed often anxious. I would wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes having nightmares that like clients would leave or the commercial property was like gone. And then I'd wake up anxious. And it always felt like there was way more to do and I could never get out from under it. So I talk about this concept of what's your familiar emotional home, like your baseline. And for me, it was overwhelm, anxious, frustration. Like I just hung out in that sandbox. And I finally got to the place, and I talk about this in the book, of just like face down on the ground. Like I was so exhausted and tired. And like, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I can't seem to ever get ahead. And no matter how much I win, it never seems to be good enough for myself or everyone around me. And there was always something else. And so I just hit a moment where I was like, something's got to give, because if I continue like this, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah. So tell me if this resonates for you, because I know this was my experience. And I've also heard a similar story from a number of guests that I've had here on the podcast, where you get into this rhythm, right? Where you think I can handle it. And you constantly put more on your plate, and then you don't feel satisfied. And so you think, I just need to work harder. I just need to do more. And so you just keep adding things to your plate. You keep chasing the next goal, the next medal, whatever. And you end up in this place where you can't see that you're overwhelmed. Because to you, you're not overwhelmed because you think you can handle the overwhelm, right?
Yeah, you're delusional.
Yeah, you're delusional.
You're delusional. You're like the drunk person that's had 5 drinks and is like, no, I'm fine. I can totally drive. And all your friends are like, you're just not, though. You're stumbling all over the place. You're a hot mess. You're not making good decisions. You're saying dumb things, right? It's
Yeah.
delusion.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, they get here, right? Because like you said, a lot of this stuff is programmed into us so early that we think we have to do a certain thing, right? You think, oh, if you're a mom, then, oh, I have to go and do 17 billion things. I have to be super mom every single day. If I'm someone who owns a business, I have to do all these things because all my employees are depending on me. And there's all these different expectations that get put on us, a lot of them by ourselves, right? And we think we're in control of it until, like you said, you find yourself basically just face down and just completely overwhelmed.
I love that you said we think we're in control, because in the book I talk about that, like who's actually in control. And I use the analogy of we think we're in control of the business. We think we're in control of our family. We think we're in control of our schedule. But it's like a dog. If you've got a dog on a leash, like what happens if you let go of the leash, right? Does the dog sit or does the dog like bolt? If you're afraid to let go of the leash or sit down, the dog is in control. The dog is the master. You're the slave, right? And so I use that analogy in the book of who's your master? And it's a really hard one, but we're told like you can't love the world and also love God. Like you have to choose to say who you serve and who's going to be your master.
Yeah.
And so I had that moment where I was like, man, I say that I love God and I have faith and all this stuff. But in reality, I'm operating from so much fear of letting go of control and having to have my pulse on everything and be everything, that I'm really enslaved. I'm not free at all.
Yeah, I love that frame of reference. It actually reminds me of something that my pastor has said on a number of occasions when it comes to worry and anxiety. the things that you worry about the most are the places in your life that you trust God the least.
Yeah, exactly. And that is always where he shines a big old light. And those are always the things he's going to test us on. Are you willing to put that down, to slow down? And it's, yeah, we get faced with it. But that's why I start off with that concept right out the gate of who's your master? Because if you're not sure, just take a look around your calendar, your house, what you're afraid of. Exactly. Worrying is praying in reverse. So
Yes, yes, it is. So this week, we're going to be talking really about this concept in general, but we're going to really get into the specifics of three key areas that this might show up in people's lives, or I'd say the three most common areas that are going to show up in people's lives, which is work, relationships, and health. But I'm curious before we jump into that, can you tell me a little bit about the book? What prompted you to actually write this book?
the book really started at that season of my life when I was face down on the floor, thinking my body was totally having a burn down moment. I was laying face down on the ground, 15% body fat, ultra fit by the world's methods, doing all these workouts, and everything in my body was screaming in pain. And I needed so much rest and recovery to come back from all the years of really pushing my body beyond burnout because no pain, no gain, right? Second place is first loser. The body was the first thing that was like, I was just so exhausted. But then once I went into the season, like a wilderness season, really, which lasted about 18 months of me starting with deep rest, also looking at everything in my life that felt completely misaligned. Like I knew God is a God of peace. Why am I anxious all the time? Like God is a God of clarity, not confusion. Why is there so much mental fog and all this stuff? So I started really pressing in. And so for about 18 months, I spent a lot of time in prayer and just a lot of deep work on myself in meditation. And I was journaling, and I really feel like God took me through this process of releasing all of the weight, all of the garbage, all of the programming that I had picked up that was creating all of this sickness, really dis-ease in my body and not dis-ease mentally and everything, right? And so after I started coaching clients through the process, I just felt like prompted by the Holy Spirit to say, you know what, it's time to write the book. And so the book is actually came from all those journals that I'd kept during that time of writing and processing and everything. And so it's really a journey. The book is designed drop the armor, meaning the weight that you are carrying that is really blocking you from receiving what God has for you. Drop the programs, drop the weight of your past, ignite your faith in a whole new way, and really step into the calling God has for you. Because I just want to say this. What he has for us, we got to pack light. We got to take only what's essential and let him provide the rest. We can't be bringing all our baggage because we are not going to make it into the good land.
It's interesting because I've had this conversation a number of times with people about how do we know what God's will is for us, right? How do we
Mhm.
know that? And what I've heard over and over again from super successful people, because most people, if they don't have money, they assume that when you get money, that's going to make you happy, right? And most people, when they've been super successful, they have the house, the car, the family, all that, just like you did, and they're still not happy. The struggle becomes, how do I follow what God wants me to do? How do I find this peace and this alignment? But I also, by the way, God, want to keep my house and car and all that stuff, right? And like you said, you have to travel light. It's not to say that you can't have those things
Mhm.
and live a Christ-centered life.
Mhm.
It's that if those things are the most important thing to you, it's going to be really hard.
It's going to be really heavy. And again, I think there are many really beautiful, heart centered, Christ centered men and women of faith that have an abundance of physical things. But I believe that's really that seek ye first the kingdom, and then all things will be added unto you. But most of us have it backwards. Seek ye first all other things, and then maybe the kingdom will be added. And so we've got an inverted system, which is really like the whole thing after the fall was like, we got us focused on chasing the wrong things and then thinking that then we would have the kingdom, which is peace and freedom and joy. And, but it's upside down, right? We think those things are the way. Really, we start with the kingdom and then, yeah, you can have a beautiful home and vacations and stuff, but you're not weighed down. You're not terrified of losing it. This is another thing I hear from people that have even a little bit of success. I had a meeting with someone this morning and she was saying, my business is now doing 30K a month. And for her, that's a big thing. And then she was like, but now I'm afraid of doing anything new. Or now it's, and I've heard the same thing for people that are doing 8 figures, like 10 million, 20 million. It's the same feeling. Going back to what we were saying, it's just add more zeros and more things. The feeling is the same. You can have everything and be afraid most of the time that someone's going to come steal it from you or take it from you. And you're carrying this weight of worry because you have put security in things or people or God knows what, except for the real source of security.
Yes, absolutely. As y'all can see, this is going to be a really great week. We're going to really dive into a lot here, and we're going to kick it off tomorrow by talking about how do you start to find this alignment when it comes to your career? Because I know that's going to be the sticky one for a lot of people. It's like, how do I still maintain this competitiveness and all this stuff I do at work and also find this peace and this harmony that we're talking about here? That's going to be on tomorrow's episode. Before we end, do you have any final thoughts just on what we've talked about so far? That one thing that you maybe want somebody to walk away from today?
I just want to invite you to consider you can be overwhelmed with worry and weight and all the things, or you can be overwhelmed with excitement, inspiration, desire, things that are life-giving. You can be overwhelmed by freedom. It's like everyone, you hear that thing like choose your heart. I'm going to invite you today. What if I could choose my overwhelm? Where I could be overwhelmed with just a feeling of just knowing that I'm provided for, knowing that I'm on the right path, and I don't have to be so heavy. And that's what I want to do, is just put a seed to start to go, what if? Because overwhelm can be a beautiful thing if you're overwhelmed by grace.
Yes, I love it. That's a really great reframe. So y'all come back tomorrow and get overwhelmed with some more great advice. And with that, I will just remind everyone that while none of us are born unshakable, we can all become unshakable, because being unshakable is a choice.
Thanks for listening to the Unshakable Habits Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest, please subscribe at unshakablehabits.com/YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. You can learn more about Unshakable Habits at unshakablehabits.com. Until next week, be unshakable, my friends.